Margaret was 68 years old when she noticed something was wrong. It started small. Street signs at night were harder to read. Colors looked slightly washed out. She assumed it was just age. By 71, she could not drive after dark. By 73, her doctor confirmed what she had been quietly dreading for years: cataracts. Both eyes. The doctor was efficient, clinical, and brief. The solution, he said, was surgery. A blade goes into the eye, the clouded lens is removed, and an artificial one is inserted in its place. Routine procedure. Nothing to worry about. 3.5 million Americans go through it every year. Margaret asked if there was any other option. The doctor said no. That is the only treatment that exists. What Margaret did not know, and what her doctor may not have known either, was that at that exact moment, a team of researchers at one of China's most prestigious medical universities had already developed something that could change that answer entirely. Not a surgery, not a laser, a drop. A single drop placed in the eye, carrying a molecule that the human body already produces naturally, designed to do something Western medicine had declared impossible for over a century: dissolve the cataract without touching the eye at all. Cataracts are the leading cause of blindness on the planet. Not glaucoma, not macular degeneration, not diabetic retinopathy. Cataracts. The World Health Organization estimates that cataracts are responsible for nearly half of all cases of blindness worldwide. That is more than 20 million people who cannot see because of a condition that, in wealthy countries, is managed with surgery. In the United States alone, 24 million Americans over the age of 40 have cataracts. Half of all Americans over 75 have them. The number is expected to reach 50 million by 2050 as the population ages. Every single one of those people, if they want to see clearly again, is told the same thing: you need surgery. Schedule the procedure. There is no other way. For more than 100 years, that statement has been medically accurate. Western ophthalmology developed no alternative. No drug, no drop, no non-invasive treatment has ever successfully reversed cataract formation in a human eye. The assumption became so deeply embedded in the field that most researchers stopped looking for one. China kept looking. To understand what Chinese scientists discovered, you need to understand what a cataract actually is at molecular level. The lens of the human eye is made almost entirely of proteins called crystallins. In a healthy eye, these proteins are arranged with extraordinary precision, packed together so tightly and so uniformly that light passes through the lens without scattering. The result is clear, sharp vision. As the eye ages, these proteins begin to malfunction. They unfold, clump together, and form disordered aggregates that scatter light instead of transmitting it. The lens clouds over. Vision blurs. Colors fade. Night vision deteriorates. The clouding is the cataract, and because the proteins are misfolded and aggregated, not missing, surgery does not fix the underlying problem. It removes the lens entirely and replaces it with plastic. For 100 years, no one found a molecule capable of reversing the aggregation and restoring the natural proteins to their correct shape. Then a research team at Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou, China, studying two families with a rare genetic form of childhood cataracts, found something unexpected buried in the biology of the eye. The families they were studying had a mutation in a specific gene. That gene controls the production of a molecule called lanosterol, a naturally occurring sterol that the healthy human eye produces on its own. In the families with the mutation, lanosterol production was impaired. Their lenses clouded over in childhood. Their parents, who had the functioning version of the gene, produced lanosterol normally. Their lenses stayed clear. The connection was immediate. If the absence of lanosterol caused cataracts, and the presence of lanosterol kept lenses clear, then perhaps delivering lanosterol directly to a clouded lens could reverse the damage. The team synthesized lanosterol into an eye drop solution and began testing. What happened next was published in Nature, one of the most respected scientific journals on the planet. In laboratory studies using human lens cells, lanosterol broke down the protein aggregates responsible for lens clouding. In rabbits with experimentally induced cataracts, the drops restored lens transparency. And then, in the result that sent shockwaves through the ophthalmology community, in 7 dogs with naturally occurring cataracts, dogs with the same age-related lens clouding that humans develop, 6 weeks of lanosterol eye drops significantly reduced cataract severity and increased lens transparency in every single animal tested. Dogs that had been losing vision were seeing more clearly, without surgery, without a blade touching the eye, with drops. The implications are difficult to overstate. Cataracts develop through a biological mechanism. That mechanism had now been shown, in multiple experimental models, to be reversible through a molecule the eye already knows how to use. Chinese researchers at Sun Yat-sen University's Zhongshan Ophthalmic Center, one of the largest and most respected eye research institutions in Asia, followed up with additional studies exploring how lanosterol works at the cellular level. They confirmed that it operates by suppressing the specific pathway that causes protein aggregation in the aging lens. Other research teams across China began investigating variations of the molecule and optimized delivery systems to get lanosterol through the corneal barrier and into the lens in sufficient concentrations. The scientific infrastructure China had built in ophthalmology, institutions, funding, clinical trial networks allowed this research to move at a pace that Western institutions were not matching. The director of Zhongshan Ophthalmic Center stated publicly that the center had developed what it described as the world's first eye drops capable of reversing cataracts. That statement did not come from a startup making promises. It came from the director of one of China's premier academic medical centers, affiliated with Sun Yat-sen University, one of the country's top research universities. Now here is where the story becomes complicated, and this is the part that Margaret, and millions of people like her, deserve to know. As of 2025 and into 2026, Lanosterol-based eye drops have not completed the large-scale, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials required for regulatory approval in the United States or Europe. The animal results were extraordinary. The laboratory results were extraordinary. The biological mechanism is real, documented, and published in peer-reviewed journals. But the FDA requires human trial data at scale before any drug can be approved for clinical use. Phase 1 trials testing safety in humans have begun, primarily in China. The results of those trials, focused on whether the drops are safe and tolerable in human eyes, have been encouraging. No serious adverse events have been reported, but Phase 2 and Phase 3 trials, which would test efficacy in large human populations over long follow-up periods, are still underway. The drop that reversed cataracts in dogs, that broke down protein aggregates in human lens cells in the laboratory, has not yet been formally proven to reverse cataracts in humans at the scale regulators require for approval. In China, clinics have moved faster. Research institutions affiliated with major universities have begun offering lanosterol-based treatments to early-stage cataract patients under clinical trial frameworks, collecting real-world data at a scale and speed that Western regulatory systems do not permit. Millions of patients in China with early cataracts are being monitored. The Chinese government, facing a rapidly aging population and an enormous burden of cataract-related blindness, has made this a research priority. The National Medical Products Administration, China's equivalent of the FDA, has accelerated its review timelines for innovative therapies with strong preclinical evidence. The gap between what China is doing and what American patients are allowed to access is not a gap in science. It is a gap in regulatory speed and risk tolerance. While American ophthalmologists perform 3.5 million surgeries per year, charging thousands of dollars per eye, Chinese researchers are racing to complete the trials that could make those surgeries unnecessary. The biology says this is possible. The animal data says this works. The human safety data says there is no danger. What is missing is the Phase 3 efficacy data that the FDA will require before it acts. And that data is being generated right now, mostly in China, mostly without the knowledge of the millions of Americans who are scheduling surgery because their doctor told them there is no other option. Margaret had her surgery. She sees clearly now. The procedure went well, as it does for most patients, but she is 68. Her artificial lens will likely last the rest of her life. She will never know whether, if she had waited 2 more years, she might have used a drop instead. That is the reality of the moment we are in. The science exists. The molecule is real. The results in animals are documented. Human trials are underway. And the country running those trials at the greatest scale, with the most resources and the most urgency, is China. The same country that gave the world the first brain-spine interface that let paralyzed patients walk. The same country that is growing human organs in laboratories. The same country whose medical research